Is it hard for you to talk about your sexual wants, needs, and desires? Well, you're not alone. It's hard for everybody, and that's no pun intended. Are you hard right now and can't talk about it? Well, if so, this podcast is for you. Hi, I'm Toby. I'm from the band Emery. I've also led a bunch of men's groups with the True Man Experience, and I'm working on this podcast with Dr. Stormy, who is an amazing sex coach who has helped so many people, and that's what we're here to do. We were here to open up the conversation. You need to be able to talk about your sexual desires, your wants, and yes, even your needs, and where you can take your sex life with your partner. So sit back, relax. We're taking listener questions. We're going to have a great episode. Join us because this is the sex education you always wish you would have gotten. All right, we're back with another episode. As you remember, last week was the beginning of our two-parter about bedroom blunders. And Stormy, you made a good point last time. We were doing 6 common bedroom blunders. We did 3 last week. We're going to do 3 again. And we're not just going to tell you what's wrong and leave you there. Stormy's got a lot of good information about how to help you. We're not going to do that. A lot of relationships are just like we were saying, I'll tell you what's wrong, but don't offer any help. We're going to offer you some help here for sure. So I'm ready to get into it if you are.
Yeah, totally. And definitely check out part 1, right? These are not in any ranked order, but these are just common bedroom blunders, right? So from my time of working as a sex and intimacy coach with men, women, and couples, from my own journey, I said in the last episode, I was with friends. I was like, hey, what are the common, 6 most common bedroom blunders? So I was pooling different friends and reading different studies. So, but the idea is that these are common. Okay, so if you identify with these, please have grace and love, compassion with yourself and your partner. There's a reason these are common, right? And if you do identify with them, it's then get curious about that. Right? We only can grow in the ways of which we know we need to grow. So look at this as a growth opportunity.
I love it. All right, let's get into these blunders.
All right. So the 4th one, but the first one for today is what we're going to call the blunder is monotony, right? Vanilla, or another word for it, vanilla sex, right? It is very common in long-term partnerships to fall into routine, and routine is not particularly an ingredient for a sexy, passionate, vibrant sex life. Okay. So that vanilla sex, that monotony is the blunder. So just like we've said in in almost every episode, maybe every episode, the communication piece. So, right, bringing up, not in the moment, not when you feel like you're having vanilla sex and you're like, ho hum, I'm so bored, right? The same old, right? But bringing it up to your partner when in a time when you're not in the bedroom and you're feeling connected, to say, hey, and Toby, you said last episode, using the I language, right? I'm feeling like our sex life is a little monotonous or a little routine. What I'm really wanting is to spice it up with X, Y, or Z, right? Or what I'm really curious about is bringing in X, Y, or Z, right? What do you think about that? Does that excite you? And if not, what does, right? So these are just conversation points, right? But you have to bring it up, but you have to turn the focus on your routine sex life to make it not routine.
Perfect. I love that because it's so easy too, as well, because we often thrive in routine. You know what I mean? Routine and lots of totally. my workout routine, always be consistent every morning, wake up and do it, or you won't do it, or do this. And then I think sometimes with sex, we get into that mentality. Well, at least we're doing it. We're being consistent with having sex, but then oftentimes it does get a little monotonous, or you don't look forward to it as much. And so if you can just have a little bit of adventure there, a little creativity, it's good for you.
Yeah, right. It can be the whole average for couples in the United States is 1.3 times per week. So you're like, oh, well, we're checking that box. Look at us go, right? And that's great if that's fulfilling. And so the thing is, if it starts to feel a little boring, right? And think about it. If you are in a monogamous partnership, you are choosing to have sex with one person and only one person in the whole world of people, right? First of all, that in and of itself to me is very sexy, but then make it amazing sex. Put the focus on it being an important part, not just a checkbox of 1.3 times per week, right? So, figuring out one of the ways to make it not so vanilla is you got to figure out what you want. Not what you already are doing, but what you want to do, what you want to bring in. And I mentioned in the last episode, there's lots of different tools out there. I like this tool called the wants, wills, won'ts list, which is what it's like long, many pages long, about different sexual acts, physical acts, what you want to do, like yes, 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 please, will, like yeah, I'm open to that, or won't, no, absolutely no, right? So you do your wants, wills, won'ts, your partner does their wants, wills, won'ts, and now you have a really powerful communication tool. So there's different tools out there like that. I have a wants, wills, won'ts list. You can email me, stormy@lovedeeplab.com. Just put wants, wills, won'ts in the subject. I will send you that. So, you do it first. You can do it together with your partner. You have a communication tool there, but figuring out what you want to bring in is a great place to start, to make it not so vanilla, right? To make it to add novelty, to add spice, to add excitement, to add adventure. Maybe you want to add in some kinkiness, right? And again, full consent. So you figure out what you want, will, won't. Your partner figures out what they want, will, won't, and now you have a communication tool.
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, it's really fascinating and helpful to learn what are your want. Like, I won't do that, and you can find out why I want you to do it. What is it about that you don't like, and what does that mean about other parts of your life, and what do you want, will do? Like, those conversations can be really deep and helpful to learning more about your partner and yourself.
Yeah, because so it's great if you might find, I mean, this tool has so many different possible iterations, right? But it is a communication tool. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But where are your wants? Where are your partner's wants? Because maybe there's some things you both want that you didn't even know that you wanted, let alone your partner wanted, right? But just as important, like you just mentioned, Toby, is where are your partner's wants? Where are they? And then you can be curious about that. And let's say you have a want, they have a won't. That's a great, it's not about convincing them away from their won't at all. This is sovereignty and boundary work, but it's about, wow, I didn't know that. Like, thank you for sharing that. That's like super powerful to know. Like you mentioned the last episode, you thought a girlfriend liked her ears bit, kiss, and she didn't, right? Like we all make assumptions. So this helps take the assuming out and also gives you a tool to start bringing some novelty in.
Oh, perfect. All right, let's go to the next one.
So the next one is performance, right? When the blunder is to get into performance or shutdown. Okay. We talked in the last episode about stress, and we can be doing our to-do list, right? We can be doing our oh my gosh, I've got this meeting at work. Like, this is while having sex, right? It takes us out. Performance or shutdown takes us out of the sexual experience and puts us into our head, puts us into stress, puts us into whatever. Okay. Can also puts us into fantasy. Like I think fantasy is a really powerful thing, but if I'm fantasizing and I'm imagining someone else besides my partner, am I more engaged in the experience or less engaged in the experience, right? Because fantasy is not a bad thing, right? So basically this whole blunder is about performance or shutdown or being not present in the sexual experience. Okay. And there's a lot of different things that come into this, right? Performance anxiety is a big one. Body image is a big one, right? If I feel like ashamed or shut down in my body, I am not going to feel like the sexy, beautiful creature that I am, that we all are, right? Because I'm going to be in like observation and self-criticality, all those things that take me out of my experience. For men, it can often be a worry about their penis size, right? Is my penis adequate? Does she like my penis, right? All these things that take us out of present moment, take us out of experience, take us out of connection with ourselves and our partner, and often negatively impact our orgasm.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that has been an issue for me in my life. Just the idea of, am I going to be good enough? I'm so worried that I won't live up to expectations or body image. I have a little bit, I've experienced some body dysmorphia in my life. Just those things can really get in your head when the thing is, you're there with your partner who wants to be with you. You know what I mean? Like if you've agreed to be at this moment, they have agreed to, they want you, they're desiring you. And so I'm still learning that to this day, that I'm enough, that I can be fun, that I'm attractive, that I'm worthy of being touched, kissed, hugged, made love to, all of these things. Sometimes you can get in your head that you just aren't worthy, and that's not true. Right. Everybody is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. And there's some really interesting research out there, like that we think we're way more critical on ourselves and our own, let's say, body or penis size or whatever it might be, or our vaginas, like our vulvas, like than our partner is, right? We assume they are critical of us in the same way we are critical of ourselves, but usually we are our own worst enemy. We are our most we are the most critical person in our lives. Often we are ourselves the most critical person in our life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and then some of the things that you can, so again, really having on this one, really have compassion as you look at this for yourself, right? Right. I'm 46. Like as I've aged, like in some ways I've done it super gracefully. In other ways, I'm like clawing on to youthfulness and vitality, right? And it's so I get to be like, where am I struggling there? Where is it hard for me? And why is that? And have self-compassion for myself, have compassion for my partner. If I notice him struggling in an area, or we have a conversation about his struggle, right? So really that's self-compassion invitation to you all listening and watching for self-compassion as you look at this and share this with your partner. It's also a great thing to share, to say like, I'm really struggling on being not in the moment again, but outside the moment, the sexual moment, to say, I'm really struggling because I'm not feeling great about my body right now. Like that's a great thing to share with your partner, right? It's vulnerable, it's powerful. Maybe they're like, what are you talking about? You look amazing. Maybe that's just the affirmation you need. Or you're like, they're just like, yeah, I totally hear you. How can I be of support on your fitness journey or whatever? I mean, you have no idea, right? So it gives, and I say this a lot. It's like you either lean in and communicate and create a bridge, or you lean out and don't communicate and you create a chasm. And it is really those two things. So, but as far as some sort of ways you can work with performance when you find yourself in performance or shutdown, it's a little counterintuitive, but it's actually breathe deeply, slowly, slow it way down, feel your body, not just your genitals, your whole body, right? Slowing it down. And those are ways to help you stay more connected to your body, to your pleasure, right? And not be up in your head. So they say our brains are our biggest sex organ, and I say it often, and also our biggest barrier to great sex. So getting out of your head and into your body, right? Maybe you feel your breath. Maybe you feel your partner's breath. Maybe you guys breathe together, right? These are ways to stay in your body, embodiment practices. And then as far as the self-love piece, if it's body image or penis size or whatever it might be, find a mantra. I mean, I love, as far as there's so much, we could do a whole episode, maybe we should, on self-love and body love. But mantra work, like, so maybe it's I am sexy and beautiful, right? That just what's popped in my head. So, right, it's literally like when you're doing your meditation, or you're driving the kids to school, or whatever, it's like in your mind, I am sexy and beautiful, right? Or I am a powerful lover, or my body is a temple, or whatever it is for you, right? A mantra is really powerful. And then there's also mirror practices, right? Mirror practices is a great, simple tool. It's literally what it sounds like. You look in the mirror. Okay, this is for men and women. And it might sound silly because it's hard. And you notice things that you appreciate. Set a timer for 2 or 3 minutes and notice things that you appreciate about what you're looking at. I will promise you, I shouldn't say promise, I likely promise, it's very likely that you will notice yourself being like, oh, I like my pretty blue eyes. Oh, wait, there's another wrinkle, right? Oh, I don't love this wrinkle, right? You'll notice quickly, or at least I do. And many clients have shared that it's hard to stay with the love piece. Yeah. So when you do notice that, let's say I'm saying, oh, I didn't have that wrinkle yesterday. Oh, I don't like that wrinkle. That crow's foot has really gotten intense, or whatever it might be. Instead, just take a breath and go back to something you appreciate about what you're seeing, right? Oh, I like my straight teeth, or whatever it might be, right? There's always, so this is a practice, and it is a hard one. 2 or 3 minutes of mirror practice. And if you can't do 2 or 3 minutes, do 1 minute. But that's a great way to sort of tangible way to work on some of that body love, body image piece.
You're right. Yeah, I love that, because I have been learning for sure that I can speak negativity into existence, and I can speak positivity and love into existence. So which one am I choosing? You know what I mean? Totally. And you said it earlier, we're the hardest people. You would never, if people talked about your friend the way you talk about yourself, you would defend them with your life almost. You know what I mean? But you'll say the worst things about yourself,
Absolutely.
And that speaks into existence a negativity that you'll live with. And so if you can speak positivity, because you should love yourself, you got to love yourself. Why would anybody love you if you don't love you? I've always said that about my band. Like, I am the biggest fan of my band, because if I'm not the biggest fan of my band, why would anybody else be? I want to love the music, the creativity, all the things that we're doing. And that's what I'm working on myself. It's really hard with yourself though, because you know all your flaws. you know, all your insecurities, all of those things. And it's really hard, but I love that, looking in the mirror and doing that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a hard one. You know, if it feels awkward, just know it's supposed to feel awkward.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
we don't grow,
sure.
we don't grow in our comfort zones. I say, a retreat leader I went on a retreat with, he calls it fun, comfortable. And I love that. Right. So it's supposed to be fun, comfortable. It's uncomfortable, but you're also like, wow, I know this is good. And you know, that inner critic piece, Michael Singer, who wrote the book Untethered Soul, that's a book I highly recommend. He talks about our inner roommate. And it made me think of what you said, Toby, like we would never let someone talk about a friend like that. But yet we talk about ourselves like that all day long some days, you know. He calls it our inner roommate. You're like, wow, my inner roommate is a total bitch, right? It's like, right? And so, but you wouldn't tolerate a roommate treating you the way we treat ourselves. And so I love how Michael Singer talks about that. For me, I mean, I read his book, I don't know, 14 years ago, and I still think about like, wow, how's my inner roommate? Like, how is she talking to me today? And so it's just a great tool to look at that way.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, what's our last blunder?
So the last blunder is what I'm going to call the orgasm gap. Okay. And it is a real thing. We've talked about it in many episodes. I do really think we should do a whole episode on the orgasm gap. But the orgasm gap is basically looking at the difference in, if we're talking about in hetero couples, the orgasm gap looks at hetero and homosexual couples. But like hetero couples, we're talking about the difference in hetero men and how often they orgasm, and hetero women and how often they orgasm, right? So this also encompasses faking it, right? Women or men faking it, faking orgasm. And then also incorporates the like whole like, oh, let's just get it over with, right? Which is usually goes into faking it. Like, I'm going to fake that I have orgasm just to get this over with because I'm nowhere near actually orgasming, right? So instead of, again, communicating, I'm going to be in performance. And by the way, I've totally faked orgasms. I do not do that anymore. So this is not saying that I don't do this. Many, almost all women have faked orgasms at some point. But instead of faking it, it's like, let's get curious in your partnership about the orgasm gap. So, you know, about only 20% of women, hetero women, orgasm from penetration alone. Okay? It's only about 20% of women. So because for many women, we need clitoral stimulation to orgasm, and penetrative sex often doesn't provide enough clitoral stimulation for many women. So there's also like the fact that 8.3 minutes is the average length of time for penetrative sex, P&B sex, and hetero women often need about 20 to orgasm, right? So there's this big gap, right? There's this big gap. But again, this isn't about shame or blame. This is about anatomy. This is about understanding anatomy of arousal, human anatomy, and what do you do about it, right? So some of the things that we can do to bridge the orgasm gap is lengthen foreplay. And I'd say like 3 or 4 times the length of foreplay. This is for hetero couples. Lengthen your foreplay. We talked about like doing different things. And the first tip was about not having it be vanilla. Same goes for foreplay as it does for sex. Try different things, you know, play with different parts. Go back to like rolling around, dry humping, making out, right? So lengthening the foreplay. The second thing is bringing in toys, right? Consider bringing in a toy as a team player, looking at toys. You also don't just have, if you're a man out there listening, you don't just have a penis to pleasure your woman. You have fingers, 10 of them, and 2 lips and a tongue, right? So there's all these other parts where you don't just have a penis, right? So looking at all of those things, whether it's toys or other appendages, right? And then lots and lots of lube, right? Because lube also, there's usually a sweet spot for each woman about how much lube they like, but lube is a great thing to help kind of bridge that orgasm gap.
That is great. Yeah, that one is something there. I think, and once again, that's still, I think you get in your head about that too, especially from a guy's perspective. You know, you want your lover to orgasm and to think, totally. You know, some of that's the male ego wanting just to be the greatest lover you've ever had in your life. You know, and then you won't live up to that. You can't live up to that daily or weekly or even, you know what I mean? Right. Like sometimes you're just going to be average or it's just going to be normal. It's just going to be more romantic than super sexual, you know, all of those things. And so it's good to know that and accept that it's okay. Like sex should not always be mind blowing, the craziest thing you've ever had. It is about connection. And so if you're connecting, you're already winning for sure.
Yeah, that's so well said, right? Like the desire to be a better lover. I really believe most of us, almost all of us, have a desire to be a great lover. And that's beautiful. And for sure, our listeners and watchers do, right? You're listening, watching this podcast for a reason. Of all the podcasts out there, right? You want to learn to be a better lover for your own pleasure and for your partner's pleasure. And that's awesome. But I love what you said there, Toby, too, right? Like there's also all different kinds of sex, right? There's adventuresome sex, there's quickie sex, there's connected sex, there's mind-blowing sex, there's rough sex. I mean, there's all these different kinds of sex, which is so beautiful because you get to learn to explore those with your partner. And so, and again, that gap, like, so, the frequency of orgasms for hetero men is about, according to research, about 95%, and for heterosexual women is about 65%. That's a big difference, right? That's that orgasm gap, that pleasure gap. So look at it as an invitation to bridge the gap. How fun to work on, lean into bridging the gap, right? And that, as a man, is a beautiful calling and invitation of like, how do I work on bridging that gap? It's not because you're not a good lover or your penis isn't adequate. It's because of how male anatomy and female anatomy. That is it.
You're right. All right. You want a good Stump Stormy this week?
Sure.
All right. Let's Stump Stormy.
It's time to Stump Stormy.
All right. You might know this one. I don't know. Okay. The G-spot was nearly called what after the professor who coined the expression that we know today?
Oh, I don't know what the G-spot was nearly called. What comes to my mind there is that, well, it also is like, there's still controversy whether G-spot even exists or not. But I'm going with yes. I'm a fan of yes. So yes, it does exist. So what was it nearly called?
This one would be tough.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
It was going to be named after the professor Beverly Whipple. It was going to be called the Whipple Tickle.
Ooh, I kind of love I have never heard of this. The Whipple Tickle.
I know that sounds a little more fun than G-spot, but.
Well, I just was imagining this great toy called the Whippler Tickler. Yeah. The Whippler Tickler. Maybe there is. It's probably already out there.
I got to get that for marriage supply.
The Whippler Tickler. No, but one of the things I love about that is that's a woman, right? Like, so, right? Like, if you look at so her name is Beverly Whipple, right? I'm going to commit this to memory. Okay. Do you have a year that she coined?
No, I don't. I can look it up though.
Okay. So just interesting because, right, if you look at like the anatomy of the clitoris, which we've talked about like in our episode on like the magic clit, right? The entire clitoris this is all pretty new because of so many reasons, which we won't go into today, but the really understanding female anatomy is really relatively new. Like we didn't even understand the full structure of the clitoris until recently. So, I love that. I love that it was found by a woman. I love that. It's interesting. I wonder how it went to G-spot from Beverly Whipple, but
no. So let's see. She's an author and sexologist. She's a co-author of a publication, The G-Spot, and other recent discoveries about human sexuality. Now, it does say that somebody else might have found the G-Spot, but I think she has done a ton of work. Yeah. She kind of coined it. So
cool.
That's interesting. So
that's awesome. See, look, I love this. I learn all these new things too. It's so great. Great. I hope I'm learning about sex until my last breath. So
for sure. Me too. All right, let's get to listener questions.
Have a question? We've got answers. Here's this week's listener question.
All right, here comes our first question. Hello, Stormy and Toby. My wife and I were having a conversation last night about circumcision. I am circumcised, and she says she prefers that. She has had boyfriends in the past who weren't, and she said she thought it looked ugly and didn't prefer it. This is just her opinion, guys. I'm overjoyed. She loves my willy, but we wanted to know, is there any sexual benefit to being cut or uncut? And this comes from Forsaken Foreskin.
So, it's interesting that there's a lot of controversy, actually, even in the literature about circumcision versus non-circumcision, right? Benefits, pros and cons, all these things that are not just aesthetic, but pleasure, UTIs, STIs, all that stuff. But what's interesting, so there is a lot of controversy out there, but most of the research and the compilation of research say there's no direct link between circumcision and sexual satisfaction.
Yeah.
Okay. There is also again, you can find some that says there is, some that says there isn't, but hasn't been a definitively link between pleasure and sensitivity, whether you're circumcised or uncircumcised, right? There's been sometimes people will say that the foreskin has a lot of nerve endings in it, so not having foreskin will desensitize a man, but really the research shows both directions actually. So it's really not clear. It's also not there's not clearly a female preference, like you said in the listener question. Obviously, his wife has a preference. Great, we all have preferences, but there's not a universal female preference in the United States. But the foreskin does naturally lubricate, so that can be one of the things, right? So there can be like hygiene. You have different hygiene practices. So if you have a foreskin and if you don't, pros and cons to that. Circumcision does slightly reduce the risk of certain UTIs and STIs. So by not having a foreskin, but really, that's long-winded way of saying there is not a universal preference. There's not consensus as far as benefit. And so, I think it's like, love what you have. There's different religious reasons for circumcision or not circumcision. Now there's parents like weighing the pros and cons for your male infant child. So just doing your own research, looking at that. But, usually the things that are talked about are the look, the hygiene, the sensitivity. There is also like some research that show that there's female pleasure, increased female clitoral stimulation when there's a foreskin, right? Because of the skin on the head of the penis. But it's really a preference. And then, there's also a lot of, culturally, like about men feeling like, wow, that's like mutilation, just like there is for different parts of the world for female mutilation. So however you feel about it, but do your research. But it really is, there is no consensus in the research world.
Okay. Oh yeah, my parents lopped it off. We did too. I had I didn't totally want to. I didn't know. I was up in the air on it for my son, and we did, but I do wonder sometimes. I don't know. I think too, like you said, a lot of it too is we're at a different age and time now, and I think that I heard that they're gonna make it elective surgery, or maybe already have, so people will start having to pay for it, and you're just gonna choose not to. You know what I mean? Like it'll outprice you, so you'll go, it's not worth it. So we'll see what happens.
Well, and then it's about choice, right? It's like I think it's always anything that makes us do our research and become informed, and then we make an informed choice rather than it's just what we do, right? I'm all for informed choices. So become informed. Like with my son, we did, because that was just what you did. Right, like I didn't really, but I also had an issue enough with it that I didn't want to go watch. I sent my husband. I was like, I can't watch because it feels like, so again, like no judgment, just getting curious and doing your research.
Yep, 100%. All right. Here comes our next question. I hate using condoms, but we do not want any more kids. We've done well with the pull-out method, but I'm nervous that we could still get pregnant. My wife doesn't want to use birth control. So, Stormy, do you have any suggestions to be safe as possible to avoid getting pregnant? This comes from, we don't want to miss a period.
Right. So I really hear about not wanting more children. So I honor you for that, being clear on that. And that's just, again, about informing yourself, right? So the pull-out method, or pull and pray, as like it's often referred to, right? But let's look at that like more holistically, right? So the natural method of contraception really is more than just pull, way more, and should be more than pull and pray. Okay, it's tracking the menstrual cycle, avoiding sex when you're in the fertile phase of your menstrual cycle, which is about 6 to 9 days a month for the woman. But it's also things like your basal body temperature, your cervical mucus, right? And I looked at the CDC reports that natural family planning, so all of this, okay, but not just pull and pray, all the other things I just mentioned, is about 76% effective when followed accurately. And that's the key, when followed accurately. That's pretty, but again, that still means that 1 in 4 people who use that will get pregnant. So it really depends on how much do you not want kids? What is your risk tolerance? It's just the same for any birth control method, right? This is natural methods are a form of birth control, right? So natural family planning. So looking at your risk tolerance there, looking at what would you do if you did get pregnant, right? Like playing it all the way through, but then making sure you're actually doing more than just pull and pray if you're going to do the natural method. there's also other methods besides just condoms. And it sounds like, I don't know if he meant hormonal birth control there or all birth control, but, barrier methods. There's things like, obviously, condoms, cervical caps, sponges, diaphragms, spermicides alone. So these are barrier methods of contraception. And then there's obviously the hormonal methods that you talked about, right? Like birth control that are hormonal type of birth control pill. But then there's also intrauterine devices that are non-hormonal, like different IUDs, like the copper IUD. So this is just an overarching summary, but there's lots of different kinds of birth control. So get really specific. Is it like, I don't like the feel of condoms, or I don't like the impact of hormones on my body, right? Because then that can help you hone down. And then I would say do your research, talk to your doctor, make sure that you're collecting all the information, making an informed choice. And if you're going to practice the natural method of contraception, make sure you're doing it accurately.
And you can get a vasectomy. I got one. Most of my friends now at this age,
they're surgical.
in their 40s, we've gotten that. And it's not bad. It's not bad at all. That some people get knocked out. I was talking to the doctor while it was happening. It was wild. It was.
Where she's just chatting.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I mean, because whatever they use, they're not I guess it's cauterizing, not soldering your vase to get
soldering.
Yeah, but I smelled something. I was like, what is that smell? I was like, oh, that's me. That's I don't know, but it was interesting. I thought that was a pretty easy procedure, honestly. So there's lots of options out there for sure.
There is lots of options, and I think that part of the information, like pull and pray, is just one part of natural planning. So make sure you're doing all the parts if you're going to do the natural method.
Yeah, 100%. Make sure you email us all your sex ed topics and questions. Like if you want us to talk about something, send it in. Or if you have a question with you and your partner, or you're single and you're having some questions, just send them in to us. You can email Stormy at lovedeeplab.com. You can email me at Toby@marriagesupply.com, and email Stormy for sure, because she has so many resources, and a lot of them are free for folks. So make sure you email her. I mean, you have like you have the free sex drive building guide. You have the wants, wills, guide, and wants. Yeah. I mean, you have a ton of really cool things for folks. So make sure you email her at Stormy@lovedeeplab.com. You can also follow Stormy at Dr. Storm. You can follow Dr. Stormy on Instagram at Doc Stormy. That's DOC. Stormy #1, Doc Stormy 1 on Instagram, or her TikTok is Touchy Subjects with 3 S's at the end. And you can follow the Marriage Supply Instagram as well as the.marriage.supply, and you get 10% off at marriagesupply.com with code SEX101. Another great episode. I hope we helped you folks a lot. We enjoyed it. We're hoping you enjoy it. We love the turnout, the listeners, the questions. Thank you so much. Let's keep it going. Because remember, knowledge is power. Sex is power.
And the world needs more of both.